Hello
Morning,
everyone.
Lou.
Morning, Jordan. How you doing?
It's early. It's early.
I know, yeah. Hello everyone. Good morning, good evening. We did this session at this time today. Hopefully, those of you in Australia and New Zealand have been able to join us today. So welcome. Nice to have you here. I'm Louise Archer, and I'm joined by my colleague.
Morning, everyone. I'm Jordan Taylor.
Nice to have you all here. So today we're talking about if retained search will work in your market. The reason that we wanted to do this is because we get asked about it all the time. Lots and lots and lots of people that we speak to say that they either don't think that it will work in their market, or that they're not really sure because they haven't done it. So we wanted to share our experiences and those of the people that we've worked with, really. As we go through, please feel free to join the chat, pop comments in the comments box, and we'll answer your questions as they come in. What do you think, Jordan? Because you were working in a market that lots of people ask us about, actually, now. So what are your thoughts on whether it will work in anybody's market?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a massive mindset thing. And often it's kind of, I think, a barrier people put up themselves to justify not pitching it as much as maybe they think they should do deep down. And I was exactly the same. When I first started to transition from contingent to retained, I was working in tech. I was working on software engineering vacancies and electronics design vacancies in a really small geography, which was Cambridge. I'd say the average salary was probably 40 or 50 grand, right, Lou? And I had those misconceptions too. I thought that retained or exec search was some mystical process that should only be sold when I'm working on C-suite positions, and the only people that could sell it were people who wore expensive suits and lived in big cities. And actually, I've come to find that it really isn't the case. I mean, I went on to be very successful selling retained search on those exact roles, on 40, 50K salary roles. And I've worked on everything from 500K roles to 50K roles since.
Yeah. And my experience is exactly the same. I was in engineering at the time initially upstream oil and gas, but then I latterly moved into, as the price and the market changed, into downstream and chemical engineering and specialty chemicals. And it wasn't particularly senior, probably 50K to 120 where I was at the time. And it was a purely contingent market. There was very little to no retained work being done. Some, but not much. And actually, I spoke to the chairman of that firm actually the other day, and he said they do 1.2 million a month in retained revenue now, in those markets, right, globally. So it didn't matter what market. What I've discovered over the years of doing it, and subsequently winning retained work in all sorts of markets since then. I think this year we did what did they do? What was the firm that we just did a search for? They were niche, weren't they? But
inhibitors.
Corrosion inhibitors. It wasn't particularly senior, the position, but we did that on retained. They had no idea what retained was, did they, when we explained what we wanted to do? And I did 5 25K telesales positions for a friend who's got a finance firm before that search. So it's not really indicative. It's not the market that's dictates whether you can do retained. It's more about whether the customers are getting what they need, and their current methods are working really well for them. Yeah. Basically, if they're getting a really good service from whatever they're doing at the moment, then they're unlikely to change what they're doing. And why should they? And why should we bother trying to convince them? But fortunately, most markets are served by the contingent model, and therefore clients aren't getting they're not getting a brilliant experience. They're often not getting what they want, or when they want it, and it's not very often a particularly enjoyable process. And that means that they're receptive to a different way.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I said earlier, I think it's a big mindset piece, and so many people see the fact that, you know, my market is primarily contingent and my competition aren't selling retained, haven't worked retained before. They see that as a barrier, as a hurdle, whereas actually I see that's the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
None of my competitors are pitching retained. Fantastic. Like, I'm the only person having this conversation then.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, you're absolutely right, because it's much, much easier to position retained solutions and secure them in a market that is fully contingent, because they're not having a great time. It's much more difficult in a market where people are already delivering a sophisticated search methodology.
Yeah, and I found when I started to have these conversations with customers in my markets that, you know, you've got to remember, recruitment, it's saturated, right? And a lot of the stakeholders, a lot of the people that I was approaching, they were getting approached 20, 30 times a week, if not a day, by recruiters, all talking about the same shit.
Yeah.
Same conversation.
Yeah.
And actually, the minute I started having a different conversation, they were engaged.
Yeah.
Because they had heard this stuff before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the problem is that it's very difficult to be different when you're fundamentally operating on the same model. And the only, as we've discovered, often in lots of markets, the only way to solve a lot of the challenges that clients are facing right now is with some financial commitment. But the way of articulating it is got to be done quite carefully, hasn't it? Because there's a lot of misconceptions and preconceptions on the client side, or there's a lot of misunderstanding, or a lack of education, a lack of understanding. And if you go wading in with "give me some money up front," then you get shut down, don't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it comes back to what you said earlier. I mean, it's a solution to a problem, and if I found, if I always view it that way, that this is a solution to a problem, and before I even think about what that solution looks like, I've got to find and identify the problem first.
Yeah.
That kind of keeps me on the right track and on the right path.
Exactly. So what you know, we've both discovered, and we see it every day now, is it doesn't matter what market you're operating in. It doesn't matter what level you're operating at. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. We teach people in Christchurch to Tokyo to Harare in Africa to Zimbabwe to Madrid, you know, you name it, all the way over to North America and Calgary and Canada. And they're all doing different things. They're all some in very senior broking and private equity and VC markets, and some in heavy mining metals out in Western Australia. But what matters, it doesn't matter what market you're operating in. What matters is, are the clients getting what they want when they want it, and is it an enjoyable process using the methods that they are? Because if they are, you're probably unlikely to be able to sell anything different to what they're getting. But if they're not, then understanding their challenges and then suggesting that you solve them using a slightly different method is actually really easy to do.
Well, I mean, when I have kind of our consultation calls with prospective members, I often get asked the question, you know, will this work in my market? And I tend to go back to them with another question. And I say, if you look at the roles that you help your customers with, are they easy to fill? Do you get roles that land on your desk and you go, not a problem? Are they a few hours work on it, send a few CVs, that'll be filled in a few days?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, retained might not work in your market. But if the answer is no, if there is a challenge, if it's difficult, if there's competition, then it will absolutely work. And I am yet to come across any prospective member that says, easy.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel, Jordan.
I know. Let's face it. When are we ever drafted in to help with something that's easy? Like, if you can stick an advert on and field some response, and, you know, one of the few that look good will do, they're very unlikely to pay us a fee for doing it, aren't they? So we're almost always drafted in for the ones that have got some kind of complexity, or they've tried a few different things and that hasn't worked, or
We all do, right? I mean, I remember when I first did the course, Lou, I remember you kind of saying to me, these are all of the reasons that a customer would retain us. These are the reasons that retained is right on any given role. And I can honestly say ever since that, I have taken customers through a diagnostic and I've tried to identify what is the right solution for that position.
Yeah.
I'm about 5 years on now, and I don't think I've worked a contingent role since. So
Yeah.
almost every role has some sort of complexity.
Yeah.
That means retained allows us to provide a better service to the customer.
Yeah, and solve the problems that aren't being solved with whatever they're doing at the moment.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
hopefully that starts to clear up it, and remove, and it might feel a bit frightening for some people, removing that barrier that, oh, well, I'm working in an XYZ market, so retain won't work, so I'll stick with my contingent comfort zone. And if you're happy doing that, some people say to me, why should I move to retain? I say, well, you don't. Like, if you're happy, it's the same on both sides, right? If you're happy with what you're doing, then carry on doing it. Far be it for anyone else to say that you should change what you're doing. But if you're not, and for any reason it's not working for you, then we wanted to say today, then you can look at your market and ask your customers, are you getting what you want when you want it? Is it an enjoyable process? And if they say, oh, you're joking, aren't you? Well, then they're a potential customer for retain. Then your barrier's gone right there.
I think it's an obligation. I've said this before. I think we are obliged as partners of our customers to be talking about solutions to their problems, to be trying to help them overcome the challenges that they face. And if you see it that way, that you have an obligation to put these solutions in front of them. It's not a sell. It's not a sell. It's a discussion.
Yeah, an education, isn't it? It's just an education articulation of how that financial commitment is going to enable you, alongside a process that you both agree to and follow, to work together to overcome the challenges that they're facing. I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt that said that if you have belief in your product and it's solving your clients' challenges, then it's your duty. It's your duty to sell it. So yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. What are you thinking, guys? Hey, Roo, nice to have you here. Hello, Aaron. Hi, James. Good morning. Is the average attrition rate in recruitment at the moment? Is it still around 8 to 10%? I'm not sure what that
I don't know whether
means.
James fill rate or in terms of people in recruitment leaving recruitment.
Can you elaborate for us, James? I'm not sure what you mean. Attrition rate in recruitment of recruiters, of hiring, of placing people?
Maybe we just discuss both while James kind of comes back to us. I mean, I suppose from a fill rate perspective, I would say the standard is probably around 20% on a contingent basis.
Yeah, I think it varies a bit, doesn't it? Some of the CV shop firms, some of the volume firms are more like 15. Some of the smaller firms that we work with are kind of higher up, 25. 1 in 4 they'll fill.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah. Whereas retained, when done properly, I would expect to see fill rates of at least over 90%, if not higher.
Yeah, agreed. That tends to average out about 90, 95.
Yeah.
It does change.
And then the other side of that coin, if you were talking about attrition rate of people in talent potentially moving out or whatnot, I can only speak from personal experience, to be honest. And the fulfillment I felt moving from contingent to retained, the enjoyment I got, the satisfaction for my role increased exponentially. I was probably, if I'm honest, when I was working contingently before I did the course and transitioned, I was probably quite close to leaving recruitment. But after, I transitioned, I was able to build partnerships with clients, I was able to be trusted and valued and add real value in return. The fulfillment I saw went through the roof. I think that attrition rate, would improve significantly.
Yeah, I agree. I was exactly the same. I would have left the industry for sure if I hadn't have been shown how to work like this. But it is a learning curve, and I've learned so much, and I'm still learning now. And every project that we do, we learn from, and every member's challenges that we help, we learn from. And it isn't as straightforward as just taking some financial commitment and then problem solved. And
it's bloody hard, isn't it?
It is hard, yeah. It is. You don't just go, oh, there's a retainer, oh, boom, right, job done.
The search Louise mentioned before that we did towards the back end of last year, I remember we said, all right, we'll jump on a Zoom together and we'll do a few hours of research. At the end of that few hours, me and Lou looked like we'd just trekked 5 days through the Sahara Desert without food or water. So yeah, it's difficult. It is.
Yeah, it can be. And your process has got to be absolutely bulletproof, and you have to be able to hang your hat on it and be very clear with what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, what your job is, what the parameters of and scope of your search is. Helga says, have you had a situation where you haven't filled a retainer, and what was the response from the client? And that's what's prompted me to go in this direction, because yes, the answer to that is yes, I have. And to my absolute amazement, I got to the end of the search and I was absolutely devastated that I hadn't found. They started off by saying it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to find what we're looking for, but we want you to carry the search out. It was a search for SABIC, the big the global chemicals company, for a chief scientist in one of their very highly specialized areas. And I executed the search with all the thoroughness and the rigor that I always do. And I got to the end of it, and there were no candidates that were qualified against the criteria, interested in the opportunity, that had been assessed against the brief. And there was a decision to be made. Did they want to flex the parameters? And I'm always willing to do that to a certain extent. And they didn't. They didn't want to. So I can only bring to them what's in the market. My job is to execute the search in its entirety, to take a thorough brief, to systematically identify all of the candidates in that market, to take the most compelling message to each one of those candidates, and to bring all of the candidates to the table that it's humanly possible to bring to the table, which I did. And there was no candidates they wanted to hire. They said, thank you very much. They paid me the final fee, and I went on my very nervous but merry way.
I think again, it's a mindset thing, right? It's like how you view things. Our job as recruiters is not to pull rabbits out of hats and to capture people that don't exist. There's only so much we can do, and that is bring the very best of the talent available in the market to that client at that time. If that person doesn't exist, what do we do?
They've got a decision to make, and the worst case is they have all of the information, all of the evidence, all of the intelligence on which to base the decision on what they do instead. And us, being the kind of recruiters that we are, will work with them through that decision and help them as much as we can to go off in a direction that is the next best thing. But that's all you can do. So Helga, I hope that answers your question. Every client knows you're not a magician. Every client knows you don't actually manufacture people. So when you explain this to them, but then you explain what you can do, and Jordan does this really nicely with what you can't guarantee. You can't pull that rabbit out of the hat. You can't guarantee this person even exists. But what you can guarantee, and then talk them through how you're going to carry this search out, what your process is going to be, and what position you're going to be putting them in at the end of the process. Yeah. And if on that basis they want you to do it, then you're in a good place.
I think customers don't get frustrated at the thought of people not filling positions with the perfect candidate.
Yeah.
Often I've found the frustration comes when they're not seeing success, they're not filling the position, but they don't know why.
Yeah.
Oh, where to turn, what to do next,
Yeah.
how do we affect change, how do we make this happen and make it
Yeah.
work? They don't know.
Yeah, or what they are being told is just from the opinion of the recruiter. Well, I think you should change the salary, or I think that, you know, your brand isn't that strong, or I think that. When you're executing search work, you're providing hard, accurate, live data.
Yeah.
You're not giving your advice. So it's all about process, Helga, all about process and being confident and clear in that.
And actually, on a contingent basis, they're normally having 5 contingent recruiters telling them 5 different reasons why it's not working. One saying you're not paying enough, one saying the great candidate exist, one saying it's location, and they're sitting there pulling their hair out thinking, which way do we turn? How do we make this happen?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I've just seen my brothers here. Oh, Ian, what are you doing watching me? Makes me nervous. Good morning, Ian. Aaron, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. We're predominantly in tech software. The market's very constrained in general. Funnily enough, we were just talking about the tech software market before we went live. My battery's running low. The handful of retained pitches which we're currently involved with are highly critical roles within these businesses. In some cases, even when cuts are being made elsewhere, we are trying to position them, as you've suggested, that they can't afford not to run a rigorous and robust search process. Right.
I think that's right.
Is there a question there?
Aaron, in my case, he said. I think Aaron was maybe responding to a point that we made rather than asking.
Oh, really?
I think. Yeah. Colin's here as well. Colin's got a question. We've got several of our members with us today. Colin asked, how do you convince recruiters who are currently sitting with 30 plus contingent jobs to transition to a retained and add retained to their job?
Yeah, that's a good question. Can I?
Take it.
Can I? So, Colin, this for me is exactly the same on the client side as it is on the recruiter side. If a client is getting what they want, when they want it, and it's an enjoyable process at the moment, there is no point trying to convince them to do something differently. It's a total waste of time, of your time and their time, because they're already happy with what they're doing. If a recruiter is happy with what they're doing, if they are enjoying their contingent work and they're getting what they want and everybody's happy, you're going to find it very difficult to convince them to change the way that they work. But what we find is quite a lot of people aren't. And in the same way that there's a lot of clients that are frustrated with the contingent model because there's only so much you can do on a no-win, no-fee basis, lots of recruiters are frustrated with it too. So my advice for convincing recruiters who are currently sitting with 30 plus contingent jobs is to find out, are they happy? Are they enjoying the way that they're working? Is it working for them? If they are, let them carry on. And if they're not, then almost in the same way that it's your duty to educate your clients, there's a different way. It's your duty to explain to them that there is a different way of doing this and they can work in a different way if they want to. And actually, they're the best people to teach because they're the most receptive.
Yeah. Can I add to that, Lou?
Yeah, of course.
One thing I think I would definitely do as someone who's been that recruiter that is frustrated, I think one thing that is common across most contingent recruiters is we hate leaving money on the table. Hate it. I guarantee if you've got a contingent recruiter with 30 jobs at any given time, I would anticipate a fill rate is probably 20, 30%.
Tops.
That means, tops. Yeah, absolutely. That means at any given time, there's probably 20 jobs a month that they're not filling.
Yeah.
I would go and sell a retainer on one of those jobs they've not filled.
Yeah.
Show them that it's possible.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, trust me, they'll see that money has been left on the table and they won't want to leave that money on the table again. That's exactly what I would do.
Yeah. It always amazes me how amazed people are when they learn how to do it and their fill rate changes so much. And instead of filling 1 in 4, they fill all 4. And they see that they can either quadruple the amount of money they're making or cut the amount of work they're doing by a quarter. and still make the same amount of money.
Yeah. And I think from a leadership perspective, I tend to refer everything in life to football. But you have that in football, right? Some leaders are verbal and they talk to people and they motivate, and some people demonstrate, and that's how they lead. Yeah, showing them the football is good.
There's another question here. I'm not sure who it is, but morning for me, it's selling the solution in the first place when we've always done contingent and want to stick to low fees. It's the same thing. Like, if they're happy with that, if they're getting what they want when they want it, it's an enjoyable process, tell them to carry on doing what they're doing. No problem. Fine. And if you want to carry on doing that and that's working for you, carry on. There's either a problem on one side or another for you to be able to solution sell. Either it's the client and they're saying, we haven't got enough CVs, or you're not filling the positions fast enough, or that noise for me, that kind of noise is the perfect opportunity to say, okay, great, yeah, we're frustrated too. Let me talk you through how we want to solve this for you now. Right? Or the problem's on our side as the recruiter, in which case they're saying, yeah, we're really happy with what you're doing, keep doing it. But we're going, Jesus Christ, this is hard. And this is really frustrating. And we're having to work on so many, and you keep pulling jobs on us, and we can't keep doing this. In which case you can then say to them, look, we want to carry on doing this, but we've got a problem. It's not commercially viable for us to keep working with you like this. We're working on a no-win, no-fee basis. The risk is completely ours. You keep pulling jobs left, right, and centre, and we never know. We have to spread our risk, which means the amount of time and effort and energy that we're putting in at the moment as well, because the market's so difficult, is just getting more and more. It's not commercially viable for us to keep doing it. We want to keep delivering the service to you. We want to make sure that we maintain the service that you're used to, but we're going to need some financial commitment now in order to make sure that we can continue to do that. So you can convert in both cases. Thanks, Aaron, for sharing your experience. Sorry, I should have read it before I read it out. There's another one there, Michael. How do you overcome, have we got time to answer this one? This will be the last one.
3 minutes, yeah.
How do you overcome the cost concerns, sticker shock clients might have about committing to a retained search? Good question. Really good question. Do you want to take that, or shall I?
Don't mind.
So I was just in that situation. Generally and typically, a retained does carry a higher fee because there's commitment, time, effort, energy, and a better result. But in the first instance, I always say, don't make it difficult for yourself. Yeah. Why don't we just, in order to demonstrate the effectiveness of the model and this way of working, I'm happy to work for this first project at the same price as I would do on a contingent basis. It's only the payment model that will be different, and just split it into usually thirds. I'm happy in thirds. Third on commencement, a third on agreed shortlist, and balance on completion. And then for subsequent projects, if you like this way of working and it works for both of us, then we can reach an agreement at a level that's sustainable for both of us.
Yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to cost concern, it's about being proactive often. I find that customers are more concerned about cost when a proper and thorough diagnostic hasn't been done at the front end. When we haven't identified the challenge, the pain, we haven't pressed on that pain and made it hurt a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That tends to be when the concern around cost.
Yeah, when they say, well, but everybody else is working at 15%, if you've done your diagnostics properly, you should be able to say, okay, that's fine. You carry on doing that then. What you said to me was that isn't solving the problems that you've got. So this is the way to solve it, and I'd like to do that. But if you want to carry on doing what you're doing, please feel free to carry on.
That pain creates urgency, right? I mean, I love a good analogy, but think of any analogy you want. Like, think of a plumber being stood at your front door. Yeah, I guarantee you, if you've got a burst pipe and water's flooding through your house, your concern at that point is not gone. It really is.
So
it's about stopping the pipe.
So true.
So.
All right, that's all we've got time for today. I hope you've enjoyed spending time with us. We're here every month. I don't know.
We get told here by Shal.
Thank you, Shal, for organising us and getting us here and telling us what to do. Please follow us on YouTube. We release a video every week, so you get loads of stuff for free on our YouTube channel. which is just Retrained Search. And talk to us as well. Tell us what your challenges are. Let us help you. There's a book a call page on our website. We're always happy to talk to you and take some time to chew the fat about your market and what you're up to. Whenever we're next on, which I think is in a month's time, is how to sell retained search to your new clients, brand new clients that you've never worked with before, which is a great topic. We'll see you there. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.